Hello and welcome back to the Money Mindset Hub podcast. I'm your host, Carla Townsend, a money mindset and success coach who helps purpose-driven entrepreneurs dissolve their money blocks and shatter their income ceilings. I am so excited to bring you this conversation today. This was actually an interview where I was the interviewee instead of the interviewer, and I just had it recently, and it was the beautiful Sheila who brought me onto her podcast. So she was kind enough to share the audio with me so that I could repurpose it here for all of my beautiful community at Money Mindset Hub to listen to as well. She asked the most incredible questions. And honestly, I know that this is a conversation you're going to love. And I hope that you enjoy this conversation. You get a lot out of it. And as always, if you do have any questions or there's anything you'd like me to bring to the podcast, please let me know. You can always contact me. My DMs are always open at Money Mindset Hub on Instagram. I would love to know what you thought. And if you haven't already, please make sure to hit subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes that come up, because we have some brilliant guests coming. And not to mention, we've had so many incredible guests already. And just so you know, you can always search for guest names, different topics on the podcast just by going to moneymindsethub.com/podcast and using the search option there just to make it so simple for you. Anyway, let's dive in, and I hope you loved this interview.
Hi, Carla.
Hi, Sheila. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I mentioned privately to Carla that her podcast is one of my go-to podcasts for money mindset. And I'm so very happy now that she's here with us to share her expertise and stories. And this topic is very, very interesting, I'm sure, to all women, especially women entrepreneurs who are listening. So let's get started. So I want to start with actually a personal question, just to warm up. You mentioned somewhere, or I think in your podcast or in your website, that you built your business while raising 3 kids, working part-time and studying. What was the moment you knew you were ready to go all in business?
Yeah, so I love this question because it does take me back. So back in 2023, that was when I quit my job and I went all in. And it was 2.5 years after relaunching to what it is today. So my laptop password in 2023 was full-time CEO 2023. And then December 20 was my last day. So when I actually set that, it wasn't something that I thought I'm definitely going to hit it. It was like, that was my big term vision. That was exactly what I wanted. I was working towards doing it. And then when it got closer to the end of the year and I began forecasting into 2024, I realized that, well, I've well and truly exceeded my yearly income from working within a few months of just working solely for myself. So I think it's really important to preface there that you must know your numbers too, both in your business and also in your personal life, because like I said, I do have 3 kids. So there are responsibilities that I had. So I needed to be sure that I could actually back myself to go all in and also have that security to do it. And it was just sort of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I can totally relate because I'm also a mom. I have 3 kids as well. And I'm sure running a business while raising a family and as a mother, right, is not easy. It's very challenging. But when it comes to money mindset, I'm sure a lot of moms or mom entrepreneurs can also relate to having that survival mindset of, how can I earn enough, or how can I earn more? Or is my savings enough? Is my current earnings enough to support the lifestyle that we want for our family? So what shift did you incorporate in your mindset or in your rituals, habits, to shift from survival mode to building a business that supports your lifestyle?
Yeah, look, this might sound like a bit of a strange example, but I believe that I have rewired my brain to just be delusionally optimistic to the point that I trust that everything is always coming together no matter what happens. So I also think too, it depends on what you have been through. Like if you've been in times of your life where it is truly been survival mode, you also know and trust that your money story is just another chapter that you get to rewrite. So my advice for anyone wanting to shift out of that survival mode and really go for it is just to get really brutally honest with yourself, with the thoughts that you're having, your behaviors when it comes to money, and also your attitudes around money and people who possess more or less of it than you. So whenever you noticed maybe you're going into patterns of judgment or jealousy, or maybe trying to downplay someone else's success, Or, those phrases come up that you may have heard when you're a child as well, like rich people are greedy, all those little ones. Start to notice when they're actually coming up, because in order to be able to shift out of survival, you actually need to be fully aware of what is your current state when it comes to money. Because if you're in survival mode and your deep-rooted belief system is that that's never going to change, and no matter what you do, this is just who you are and this is where you come from, it's going to be incredibly challenging. So just start to be aware of them. Because once you start to take ownership of your money story, your beliefs, your behaviors, your attitudes, then that's when you can actually realize that it is also your problem. It is your responsibility. And when you're committed to actually making the change, that is when you'll be able to. So something that I always like to remind everybody is that your current reality right now is based off past decisions or lack thereof that you've made. Everything right now is from everything that's happened beforehand. So if you don't like it, then this is the best place that you get to start, because you get to decide and choose again. So I hear it all the time, but I've made so many mistakes. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. Doesn't matter. I really don't want anybody to have any judgments towards themselves based on any mistakes they've made, especially when it comes to money, maybe bad investments or things like that. If I had just been smarter with the money, if I had to save more, if I had invested more, all the hads, shoulds, coulds, woulds, just leave them in the past. And from this point forward, you get to decide. So then in a future stage, you're going to look back and realize exactly that moment that changed everything.
Yeah, I really like what you've mentioned about taking ownership of your money story, and also taking ownership of your decisions, like what you have decided in the past that has affected your present moment, and just starting from there. I mean, you have the power to restart and change your reality. And like talking about that old wealth paradigms, or the old money stories that we want to rewrite. I know you help women dissolve money blocks and shatter income ceilings, but what's the most common belief holding them back from true financial success?
Great question. So I truly believe the top one above all else, because they're very multifaceted, but the top one would have to be the fear of success and what actually comes with that success. So you would often think it's the fear of failure that people are scared of most, but it's not. It's actually opposite. It is the fear of success. So, for example, where I notice this come up is that people have these deep-rooted beliefs that it'll change them, that the people closest to them are going to treat them differently, and that with more money comes more responsibility, because it's not actually the money that they're scared of. It's actually the result, the expectations, the pressure that'll be placed upon them when they do have that sort of financial success. Because at the end of the day, the truth is that money's just an amplifier, and it's going to amplify your innate characteristics. So if you are someone who is naturally inclined to be more greedy or be more selfish, then that's going to amplify that. But if you're someone who's very caring, overly generous, then you get to amplify that, because money's just a resource that you can do with it as you will. But this fear particularly comes up when there are shadow sides of us that haven't actually been healed and integrated. So when it comes to money, that's why the shadow side of it is a lot of the work that I do, because it really ties deep into your self-acceptance and your self-worth, which is directly linked to money, because the level of success you believe you're capable and worthy of achieving is directly correlated with how much money that you truly believe you can create and receive. So for everyone listening, I just encourage you to maybe journal on this. What is the worst thing that could happen if all of your big money dreams came true? What's the worst thing? And just allow yourself to go there, because you're going to actually bring further awareness to what it is you're deeply scared of and fearful of when things do work out, when it does all come together. And these are all tied into your fear of success and the cost that you believe it might have. And a lot of them are just their assumptions. They may not necessarily be truth. Maybe there is some truth to them, depending on the people in your life. Maybe some people will treat you differently. Maybe some people won't like it and you will trigger others. But I think you also have to come to terms with that. So that question, I'll just say it again. What's the worst thing that could happen if all of your big money dreams came true? And just go there for a moment.
Yeah, that's a really, really good reflection prompt. And yeah, I can totally agree. And that's something interesting, because I thought initially that a lot of, people, entrepreneurs fear failure. That's why they're not taking action, but it really makes sense that it could be more of you have the fear of success. And one thing I'm very guilty of is my mindset, which I'm trying to also like navigate currently, is that when I earn more, I should hustle more. There could be more responsibilities, right? And there could be more pressure to deliver, especially for service providers like me. We have the pressure to, to be perfect, to deliver the results that our client want, and that's holding us back most of the time. So in your opinion, what's one mindset shift that can break them out of that cycle for good, thinking that we have to hustle harder in order to earn more money?
Yeah. So when it comes to the hustle culture too, I do want to preface here too, hard work is essential. Anything worth it, anything that you're looking to achieve takes effort, and everything is hard until it's not. But what I will say when it comes, when we're looking at hustle from a place of you continue to work harder and harder and harder, you burn yourself out and you never really get anywhere fast. That's sort of what we're referring to here. But the way I want you to look at this is if working harder equated to being rich, then the working class who work more hours than most people would be the wealthy ones, but they're not.
Yeah.
So people love to overcomplicate the processes. That's just the way that our brain is naturally designed to be, is just it overcomplicates. It always adds more steps. But the fact is that there's always a more efficient way, and your money blocks are very, very sneaky. And the way I look at money blocks is they're just a metaphorical block. They're a mindset block. There's nothing physically stopping you from getting to where it is you want to go from where you are right now, but they will show up in your behaviors and your patterns. And that's how you know that there is a block there that's actually stopping you, because you're trying to make it harder than what it needs to be. So where are you right now trying to make it harder than it needs to be? Where are you maybe quote unquote hustling, but you're actually just being busy doing things that don't actually move the needle? Because there's a big difference between hustling and being busy and hustling and being productive in terms of doing money-making activities, right?
Yeah.
So a really good question to think of now for everyone listening is, what is a big goal that you have right now? Like, what's just one big goal that you're moving towards? And what is one thing that you can do to move the needle towards it today, right now, right after you listen to this episode? What is one thing that you could do to move towards that? And why haven't you yet? So there may be excuses come up immediately when I asked you that. And I really want you to try and debunk them immediately and take action instead. Because confidence is something within yourself that's only created through action, through uncomfortable action. And it is easy to build self-trust and self-belief when you move no matter what, and watch it all start to come together just one step at a time, one day at a time, one task at a time. That's what actually truly builds the confidence. And the more that you build that inner confidence, so the self-belief, the self-worth, the self-trust, because you know that you will back you, that's when you stop second guessing yourself, and your behaviors will change, your patterns will change, and then your blocks will begin to dissolve because you now have reprogrammed the way that you think, because you debunk it immediately with action. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. And it really starts with awareness, as you've mentioned.
Yeah.
Like, I really love the prompt that you've just shared. Like, what's the one thing, or what's the one activity you can do today to move the needle on your business? And the follow-up question, like, why haven't you done it? That's a really good question that we can all ask ourselves, that could really resurface the blocks that we have, the mindset shifts that we need to take on, and just taking ownership again to decide that, okay, it's time to dissolve all this money mindset drama, or the scarcity mindset, and start to move on. So now I want to talk about the some scaling strategies. We're talking about 6, 7, 8 figures. For those who are into this journey, this could be really helpful for you. And one major challenge that I've seen in the industry, especially for women entrepreneurs, is undercharging, right? When we are start thinking about scaling our business to earn more, one of the main strategy that we can do, or one of the main activity that we can really take on, is start raising your rates. And you've helped women stop undercharging and start owning their value. What's one powerful way to shift from scarcity to premium pricing with confidence?
Yeah. So I could talk about pricing all day long, because it is such an internal battle and evolution, I would say. So something that I think is a really great place to start is just to remember that you will always be too cheap or too expensive for someone. So you may as well price in a way that's actually appropriate for you and your business and your goals and your vision and where it is you're going. So what I mean by that is that you have to actually know what's coming in and what's going out. No avoidance. We don't do avoidance here, because then we also from that need to actually look at, well, what price excites me? So you've got all your different offers laid out, and you know what your overheads are, you know what your incoming, what your outgoing, you know how profitable you want to be in order to live the life that you want to live as well. Now, what prices actually excite you when it comes to your offers, and what makes sense for your profitability? Because we don't want to build just businesses for the sake of building businesses. We want to build profitable businesses. So the worst thing that I see happen, and something that I really encourage every single one of you not to do, is do not price based on what others in your niche, in your field are doing, especially if they have very similar offers to you. Because by doing that, and this may not be what you think, you may think, oh, okay, that's the industry standard, or that's kind of the ballpark. No, especially when it comes to service providers, you can charge whatever it is you want to charge when it comes to your services. Because when you look at other people in your industry and you price similar to them based on similar offerings or whatever it might be, you're actually pricing based off somebody else's money mindset, their own limitations, their own assumptions, their own money story. Everyone will price in a way that makes sense to them, and money's very subjective. And at the same time, when you also don't know somebody's, say, full financial situation, maybe their business is something that they don't actually need, but they just love it. It's an outlet. They don't actually need it to be financially profitable. It's not the thing causing them financial freedom. Maybe they've got a bunch of other investments and this is just their way to give back. So they may charge, quote unquote, affordably. And then if you're trying to match that, but you're actually doing this to create financial freedom and that's your goal, then you're going to seriously be in a difficult position and you may end up out of business. So I would just ask yourself, first of all, what assumptions are you making about others in your industry? And also, what assumptions are you making about your clients? Because undercharging is one of the number one things that I see. Undercharging and over-delivering. So delivering more and more and more value to make it worth it. But if you're constantly doing that, if you're constantly trying to add more and more and more so that they understand and so that they buy because it's worth so much, it's a no-brainer, or you're also discounting heavily, like constantly having discounts or sales or whatever it might be, then that is a massive red flag to show you that there is money mindset work to do, because you don't believe that you are worth that price. You don't believe that you can raise it or you can charge full price, or you're making assumptions that your audience can't afford it. Your clients can't afford it. What if you assumed that every single person watching you, every single person listening to your podcast, every single person that follows you on Instagram, all of your followers, what if you made the assumption that they could all afford your premium offers and they were dying to pay you that, but they're actually just being a little bit repelled because of the behaviors, the constant discounting, the constant over value add and over delivering, that actually then makes them question the transformation they're going to get and the value of that real program. You see where I'm going with this? So just look at your prices and price what makes sense to you and your business and your goals. Blinkers on, don't look at other people and what they're doing. And gradually too, you acclimatize to the prices. You will find a figure that you're like, yeah, that would make sense for me for this offer at this particular time in my business. But I do also see that a lot of women underestimate how much experience that they have. Like if you have been in business, it doesn't matter how long you've been in business for, but we forget, and I myself included have also done this, but we forget how many hours, years have we spent reading, researching, studying, all of the things, working with clients, getting real life experience, going through our own transformation. We forget that this business took years and years and years and years, and lots of effort, lots of time, lots of money, lots of unseen hours to get to where you are. So don't discount that.
Yeah, very, very good point, because I am also guilty of that. And yeah, and what I'm getting from what you've mentioned just recently is that we all have the power to take the lead, right? That we can set our own standards. And I just have a follow-up question from that, because I think in terms of like what you've mentioned about comparison, comparing your prices with others in your industry, is that fear of what if clients would go to that person instead of me. And that's why I have the tendency to think like I should just price myself or my services within what other people are charging in my industry. How do we overcome that?
Yeah. So again, this is a tricky one because that is what a lot of people do. The way I see it is your energy is felt through your confidence. So through your marketing, through your messaging, when you're showing up, when you're speaking, people can feel it if you're second guessing yourself and if you don't back it. Because when you pick a price based on other people, one, if you know that you're undercharging, but you're just trying to get people to sign up, the chances are that they probably won't. Two, it will be felt in your energy. People will feel like something's off. There's a mismatch. And especially women, because we are incredibly intuitive. So if something feels off, chances are that it is. And that actually lacks trust. So this is the thing where the self-trust, the self-belief, and the confidence begins is you need to trust in yourself and know that your person, your people will come to you because they see the value in you. And the reason that they see the value in you is because you see the value in you. You have to see yourself first before anybody else is going to. You have to see your worth first before anybody else is going to, which means you have to back yourself. And it takes time and it takes a lot of commitment and it's uncomfortable to get there. But the worst thing you can do is just price based off somebody else because it's not going to land. And look, I've seen this too, where people have priced because they think that it's a no-brainer price and then it's completely gone flat. No one signed up whatsoever. But then when I've asked, did you really back that price? Were you really excited by that price? Especially when it comes to, say, a container where there's a lot of one-to-one support and it's a lot of time and it's a lot of energy and effort to really hold space for people, for your clients. Did that price really excite you? Were you excited to show up? Were you excited to sell it? Because the thing is, when you're not excited by the prices that you're setting, you're not going to want to sell it. You're not going to want to shout it from the rooftops because deep down, you actually don't want to sell it for that. And then what will happen is it doesn't work out. You don't hit the goals that you want to hit because it wasn't aligned in the first place. Yeah, I say that all the time.
Yeah, so that's why energetic alignment is also very important when it comes to pricing and as we talk about, scaling. And I think one big question also here when it comes to scaling our business is it really possible to earn more while working less?
It absolutely is. So the reason that I know that it is, one, I've seen it for myself. When I worked in corporate, I remember I would have to work, full-time hours, and I would earn 4 figures in the week. And then I remember one day, it was a Saturday morning, I was sitting on the couch with my kids and I had 4 figures come in within 24 minutes on a Saturday morning. And I hadn't done a thing. I'm just sitting there watching the cartoons with my kids. That to me, that was a few years ago now, but that to me was like the aha moment of, I didn't even do anything just then, yet there were sales coming in without me actively doing anything. And the thing is, you've got to get really incredibly honest with yourself too and know what moves the needle and set things up. So you've got to actually have that foundation to be able to scale. We can't expect to earn more and then just really lean back at the same time without setting up the foundations first, which is where a lot of people go wrong. They don't have the systems. They don't have maybe the offer suite, the business isn't aligned to them and their life. So for instance, my approach when it comes to trying to scale more and working less, because truly I don't have that many hours that I get to in the week. So to put it in perspective for everyone listening, I currently as of this year, I have 12 hours of kid-free time every week. Up until this year, it was 6 hours a week. And for the first 12 months of relaunching my business, so from mid 2021 to 2022, I had absolutely 0 hours kid-free. So I had to learn to become incredibly efficient with the money-making activities, the things that move the needle to build that know, like, and trust for people to convert. But the intention was always to be of service. Always, how can I be more of service? It wasn't how could I make money? It was how could I be more of service? How could I help my ideal client? And the more that you understand your client and you really understand where she is and where she wants to be and how you help bridge that gap and you can communicate effectively, that's when you can actually begin to start working less and earning more because everything starts to be set up. It's clean, it's clear, there's clarity, your pricing structure is fantastic, your offers are amazing, you are lit up by them, and your messaging is on point. But in the beginning too, like, if anyone's listening and they just think, well, I haven't got all the structures and things yet, but I just want to get things done. One of the key things that I did in the beginning when I had no kid-free hours and then I went to 6 hours and now I'm at 12 is I have allowed myself to just get things done instead of perfect. So if you go back to the beginning of my podcast, which you might have heard listening to it, but if you go back, you will hear my baby in the background. So instead of trying to get things perfect and, make sure that I only recorded in the little windows that she was asleep, no, I was just like, I've got a nudge. I need to put this episode out. This is what we're going to do. It's my non-negotiable. Like, ask yourself, what are your non-negotiables every week? Because they will build the foundations for you to be able to scale off. And don't worry about getting things perfect. And not only that, you begin to set up the systems and the automations to support you, especially when you don't have a team. In the beginning, I didn't. Now I do. I have a pretty small team, which is perfect for me. But you need to be able to build the foundations before you can scale. So get things working like a well-oiled machine and make sure you are constantly doing the things that move the needle and make money. Especially as the CEO, it's your responsibility to be bringing in that income. So always focus on them first. Don't worry about your fonts, your colors, all of that sort of stuff. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about your website and tweaking the copy. What are you doing to actually show up and build that know, like, and trust? And what are you doing to put yourself out there and sell often? And selling is just serving. How are you serving your audience today?
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because there has been an assumption that, a lot of people sharing online that they are earning this much, 6, 7, 8 figure without doing nothing, right? And that's
Yeah.
an assumption with online business, but it's not the reality. The reality is we need to step up as a leader and have that intention and strategy and commitment to establish that strong foundation like what you've mentioned. And another thing is we need to also consistently decide or own the leadership in us. So I want to talk about thinking, earning, and growing like a 7 to 8 figure leader. Like, it really requires a mindset shift. So for you, what's mindset shift that helped you personally move into multi 6 or 7 figure thinking?
You know what? This might sound like an odd one, but it landed for me one day, and it's definitely the mindset shift that made me realize that this is it. Do it. So the shift was that no one's coming to save me. It's up to me to create what it is that I want to create in this lifetime. It's up to me to build the legacy that I want to build. And also that the timeline of when this all happens and how it all comes to fruition is not up to me. And just to focus on building that self-trust that it's all coming together. So one of our mantras, my husband and I say this all the time, is it's all coming together. Literally said it so many times that is just my blatant belief system, that it is always coming together, no matter what. As long as I am clear on my true north and where I'm going, it's all coming together. And as we know, on the path to success, it doesn't look like this. It's a bit like all over the place. But I always trust that it's coming together no matter what. And it's up to me, like taking that responsibility to know that no one's just going to come to you and say, here's your 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure business. It's up to you to do that. And again, don't overcomplicate it, but just take it one day at a time, one step at a time. What's your goal? What's one thing you can do? And if you find yourself falling back into these repeated habits and behaviors, then there's definitely some work to do there to stop that, because it's self-sabotage, but you can absolutely get there. I've seen it time and time again from everyone that I've worked with, and it doesn't matter what stage of the journey too, it's always something. You continually have to work on your mindset, especially your money mindset, because I do believe it's a form of personal development.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've seen the same things constantly pop up regardless of where you're at in your journey as well. Like with clients who are in startup at 6 figures, at 7 figures, and it's the same things. They're just very layered, but nothing can stop you from taking action and moving. And moving is what creates your results.
Yeah, decide and take action and commit to the actions that you said you'll do for yourself.
Well, that's self-leadership, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
if you can't lead yourself, if you can't depend on yourself, and here's the thing, every time you make a commitment to yourself and every time that you follow through, your brain begins to build that trust. That is how you build self-trust. It's through taking action, like saying, I will do this, and you do it. And then your brain goes, oh yeah, I can rely on you because you do what you say you're going to do. You do follow through. And every time you do that, that builds more and more self-trust, self-belief, that builds confidence. And then you become the woman is that you always dreamed of being, because you're the only person you can rely on. No one's going to come and give it to you. No one's going to come save you. That's where it starts.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really takes courage as well to step into that leadership role, And one thing also, speaking about becoming a leader, scaling to 6, 7, 8 figure, is that we need to also seek help, right? We can't do everything on our own. And there will be a point where you have to decide that it's time to invest to people or coaches. But many have this fear of investing, especially nowadays. I think I've heard a lot of stories about bad experience in terms of, for example, coaching or hiring people in their business from 2020 when this boomed. But there's still a huge block for women in terms of investing. How do you help your clients overcome the fear of making bold financial decisions?
I really think when it comes to investing in anything, whether it comes to investing in a mentor, whether it comes to investing in a team, whatever it is in your business, I really think you have to trust yourself with making that decision and ask yourself, why are you wanting to invest? Where is it coming from? What place is it coming from? Is it coming from fear of missing out? Is it coming from it's actually the support that you desire and strategically it makes sense? Or is it an edge for you? So is it an edge for where you know that growth is on the other side? But whenever it comes to investing in anything, it is always your responsibility what you get out of it. So whether that be for the mentor, the course, the program, the team, whatever it is, but it is always your responsibility what you get out of that investment. And it is unfortunate. Yes, not everybody is who they say they are online, but that's in real life too. It doesn't matter whether you're online or not, but that's in real life too. And I think that's where women really need to especially trust their gut, because your intuition will tell you. I've had many, many, many clients come from me from listening to the podcast because they get to know me and they feel like they really know me from listening to the podcast. So, and understanding the way that I speak, the way I communicate, I'm the same in my business, out of my business. This is the same person. And the way that they moved was because they got this big nudge. Like their intuition was just like, work with her. It's her. It's no one else. It's her. And that's what I want everyone to trust too, is when you are investing in anyone or anything, you really need to trust your intuition, because we can't blame other people for results or lack thereof. It's a mentality that won't serve you. So just learn from your investments in the past, learn from the mistakes even that you've made. And just remember that it's all a part of the game, and there's truly nothing like failure doesn't exist in my opinion. They're always just a redirection. It's a lesson. It's a silver lining. It's something you needed to learn. So I would look at it like that. Like I have never once thought to myself, oh, I wish I hadn't worked with that mentor. I always look at myself and go, how could I have maybe been a bit better as a client? Maybe how could I have shown up more? How could I have implemented more? How could I have asked more questions? Always point the finger at myself to go, what could I have done? Because again, that's growth. That's a growth mentality. I'll never point the finger outside of anybody else and to anybody else. And I think that, again, that is a really, really good attitude to have, because the fact is that, look, if we're going into, say, manifestation, like manifesting money, for instance, one of the ways that people block it is through, gossiping about other people and playing into that realm, because that's your shadow side coming out. So when you are casting judgment or jealousy, or you're blaming other people for the results or lack thereof that you didn't get, but you invested in, all this sort of things, when you're coming from that point of view, that's your shadow side coming out. But you need to own that and look at yourself and go, what could I have done? Did I see the red flags? Did my intuition actually say no, but my head said yes because I didn't want to miss out and I wanted to be included? And I thought that, they said they made this much money, so that meant I'm going to make that much money. Really just look at yourself and try not to make the same mistake twice. Just always show up as your higher self with everything that you commit to, because every investment is a commitment. And again, it's an opportunity to follow through, and it's an opportunity to learn and grow and evolve. And that's honestly the way that I look at financial decisions and investing.
Yeah, it's also a learning experience.
Absolutely.
And I love what you've mentioned, that, again, we have to take ownership, right, of that decision, that if we're going to invest in a coach, mentor, or service provider to become part of your team, we also have that responsibility to ourselves to make the most out of it and not just blame other people of lack of results. But I think we should all have that skill or initiative to also collaborate with the person you hired, and taking ownership on that investment that you've just made.
Yeah, 100%. And remembering that you chose to work with that person for a reason. So for whatever reason, again, maybe your intuition said no, but your head overruled. I always think, listen to your intuition, listen to your gut, however you want to say it. always listen to that when you're investing, because that will always lead you down the correct path for you. And that comes with everything, whatever offer you want to create, whatever you want to create in your life and in your business. I think you always have to trust your intuition. And as women, we often can lose that because we fall a lot more into the masculine rather than in the feminine and trusting ourselves. The more that you trust yourself, the more that you learn to listen to your intuition and make decisions from that place, there will be less and less mistakes. There will be less and less, resentment and things that you feel. But again, we have to just take full responsibility, because I truly believe deep down that everyone that puts themselves out there as a coach, as a guide, as a mentor to other people, that it is coming from a good place. They are truly there trying to do good in the world and trying to help people. And whether their motive is truly through service or whether it is because they just need the money to put food on the table, it doesn't matter. But I trust that they're doing it with a pure heart. And if you've invested in somebody and you didn't get out of it what you expected, just remember that there are uncommunicated expectations on your side. Then maybe you weren't really clear of what it is you wanted, or maybe they weren't really clear, or maybe, you didn't trust your intuition. But I always think that they're doing things with a pure of heart. So there's always opportunities, I think, on both sides. And I know that there's plenty of mentors that have clients that were misaligned and they thought they were something that maybe they weren't, and so they had to go, oh, what could I have learned from that? Did I say yes just because I needed the money, when in actual fact I should have said no to that client because they weren't aligned? Their mentality wasn't ready to invest and show up and do the work. There's always that too.
Yeah, and I would also like to say that intuitive power, or that intuition, is our superpower as women. And it really would benefit us if we have the trust to also, listen to our own intuition when it comes to also investing. And I would like to talk about this topic, the emotional side of wealth and leadership, that I think not norm in terms of what I'm seeing in the online space, like what people are talking about, money mindset, earning, wealth. We don't talk much about the emotional side of it. So I really want to briefly touch on it, like making more money often triggers guilt, like whether it's out earning your partner, family, or friends. So how do you help women navigate this emotional shift as well?
Look, this is one of the ones, it comes up so much, and it's really that fear of success creeping in again, like we spoke about before, and that being treated differently or people not liking it and triggering someone. So I would say first and foremost that you have to become comfortable with the discomfort that comes from setting boundaries and staying true to you no matter what. So if I give you an example, I want you to think about money conversations. When money conversations come up and that the person that you are in this conversation with doesn't hold the same views as you about money, that is your opportunity to change the subject, not engage, because it's not worth your time and energy. And it is going to trigger them, then it's going to trigger you, and it doesn't end up well. It's not up to you to bring someone on the journey as well and to make them understand. They'll understand in their own right if they're willing to or not, but you have to be prepared to be misunderstood, especially as an entrepreneur. You're going to be misunderstood. It's part of the game. In all honesty, entrepreneurship is just a game. You'll be misunderstood time and time again, and they will come on the journey if they want to. And I truly don't believe that every conversation around money and goals and success and what you're going for, it shouldn't be shared with everybody. It should only be shared with the people who actually understand you and will support you. And sometimes it takes for these uncomfortable conversations to come up to go, oh, okay, I'm not going to talk about money with this person, or I'm not going to talk about this part of business with this person, or I'm just not going to talk about my business in general with this person, because they don't understand and they don't need to. And I think we've got to be really careful when those sorts of triggers come up for yourself as well. It's just be mindful where your ego's playing, up, because your ego will come up to defend, to make someone understand, and to get them to come on the journey. But that's not up to you. That's you acting from a place of your ego. Again, that's your shadow coming up. So the more confident you truly are within yourself, the less you'll need to prove, because the proving energy is very repelling. And that does trigger people. But at the end of the day, money's very subjective. What's a lot to you and the next person is going to be very objective and subjective, I should say. It's very subjective to the person, and also their own money story, their own beliefs, their own fears, their own doubts, their own worries, depending on the part of the world that they came up in, their generational trauma that they might have, their families, all of it. Your money story is very multifaceted and runs deep, and it can be generational. So just understand that, especially say when it comes to your partner. I've had many conversations around people thinking that their partner just doesn't understand and doesn't really support their business. And maybe it's not making what they desire it to make just yet. So they can't see the success. They don't believe it yet because they can't see it, that sort of thing. But what I always say to them is you've got to understand that you are two totally different people with totally different upbringings, understandings, opinions, perceptions, assumptions. And the fact is that you can't change someone's mind. They will change and they will believe and they will come along for the journey the more that they see you back yourself and let it go. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, let it go. And yeah, we don't need to really prove ourselves or defend our vision, defend like the money that we want to earn, especially to our partner. I like what you mentioned about having that conversation with your partner. Many people would also think, is that a scam? When we're talking
Yeah.
about 6, 7, 8 figure, are you scamming people? Especially for online business owners, right? Because it's not yet like the norm in the society. But I like what you've mentioned, that we don't need to really prove ourselves and we don't need to defend what
Definitely not.
Yeah.
I feel like too, if you're constantly defending or you're finding yourselves in these conversations, maybe it's time to actually look outside and find a new circle who is, and I'm not saying, shut everyone off in your life, but I'm saying maybe you don't feel like you have the circle around you who understands this, especially in online entrepreneurship. It's very different.
Yeah.
And if you don't have anyone in your circle who's in that space, then it's really difficult to have those kind of conversations and get that support, get that guidance and collaborate and learn from one another. And I know for myself, I didn't have that when I started. Like I started back in 2019. Since then, several of my really close friends have started businesses, probably because I'm in their ears. And I encourage them to, because I could always see their potential. But at the beginning, I didn't have that circle. So I had to go find those people. And I did. And I think that's the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship, especially online, is you get to connect with women all around the world who understand and also show you what is possible and elevate you and elevate your standards. Because when you start to elevate your standards for yourself, you also start to elevate what you ever thought was possible for you. And that's just where your limitless potential comes in. There's truly no ceiling as to what you can create. And I think that is the most magical part about being an entrepreneur in general, especially online. This is something that, decades and decades before us, I never had this. But I think, at the end of the day, you've just got to make sure you're true to you. Don't allow your ego to run the show, and just follow your own path and find your people, find your circle, because your environment is so important. Like, I cannot stress it enough. Your environment is so important, and it does mean the people that you are spending most of your time with, because you will become the average of them. As we've all heard, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You definitely will. And sorry, this is a really long answer, but I think something else that I always, I pictured in my head, right? Like when I would have these conversations that would, I suppose, trigger me or make me feel uncomfortable or make me realize that people didn't have the same mind as me, like the way that I thought is very different. I suppose I had to get comfortable with not fitting in and being misunderstood. And that was really hard for me. But what I started to do was started to imagine, around these people who I love, but I just knew, okay, I'm just got an invisible bubble around me. So whenever they start to have these conversations, or whenever I start to see, the attitudes or the language around money that I truly don't believe, because that's not my view, I would just put this invisible bubble around myself, and I'd just be like, okay, oh, yep. And I would just humor them in a loving way. I would humor them, wouldn't really engage, but like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, well, yeah, I understand your view. That's all I would do. We don't need to be like, wow, this is what I think and that's wrong. None of that. No ego. It was just, okay, I can appreciate that. And I wouldn't bother giving my view, because there is no point.
Yeah,
it doesn't help anyone.
yeah. Set aside the ego and just focus. Yeah. And then, like, speaking about that emotional shift, there's also this identity shift that we need to uncover, right, and embrace when it comes to stepping into your next level as a wealth building woman. For you, what's that biggest identity shift that you've have to go through?
Yeah. So that actually probably ties into what I was just saying then, was about I had to become comfortable with not fitting in and being misunderstood, because when I grew up, I was definitely someone who I had to be right. I don't know why. It was just I had a very big ego. I had to be right, and I had to sort of make people understand. And again, that's why I say that, because it comes from experience and it doesn't end well. So that was a big shift for me, was I had to understand that it was okay not to fit in. It was okay to think differently. It was okay to want to stand out and be seen and be heard, and to build something that nobody in my life could ever fathom was possible. And that is a massive area of growth for me, and this massive shift that I had to make, because I used to be someone who really cared about what everyone thought, so much so that it just stopped me in my tracks. And then I would feel really resentful that I didn't go for it. I didn't trust my intuition. I didn't do the thing because I thought, what would they say? What would they do? How would they feel? Would they treat me differently? I always had that big fear. But at the end of the day, I had to let that go. And that was the biggest shift that I ever made, because I had to remember at the end of the day that I'm the only one, like everyone listening, you are the only one that is going to care if you don't live up to your potential. And I don't want any of us to have any regrets.
Yeah, this is a very good conversation. I hope you guys are feeling inspired and empowered now to also like trust yourself and just bet on yourself and trust on your vision. I think if there's one thing that I have learned while talking about this with you, is you really have to trust yourself. You really have to have the gut to be bold and confident enough to follow your vision, whatever other people are saying about it. Just trust yourself and do what's needed in order to fulfill that vision or dream. And as we end this conversation, do you have like any last tip or last advice for those who are listening, who knows that she's meant for bigger wealth, but she feels stuck? What's one thing she can do today to start thinking, earning, and growing like a seven-figure leader?
Yeah. So I think the thing that she can really walk away with is just remembering that your money story is entirely in your control to change. So start to audit everything, every thought, every trigger that keeps appearing in your life around money. Start to question every single one of them, especially if they're not serving you, and especially if they're not aligned with the woman that you are becoming, because becoming untriggerable is a skill and it takes constant work, much like your money mindset. Like I said before, it's a form of personal development, in my opinion, and you will forever keep working on it. It's not something you do once and then you're magically healed. It's something you've got to continue to do, because there are so many layers, but you can completely change your life. And just trust that it is all going to come together the more that you do. Just remember, just take it one day at a time and do one thing every day to move the needle towards becoming the woman that you know you're meant to be. And I suppose I love to say this at the end of all my podcasts, but just remember that the world needs more kind-hearted women with deep pockets like you. So just keep moving forward.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carla. How can people work with you?
Yeah, so you can find me at moneymindset.hub.com. I have a podcast. It's called Money Mindset Hub. It's all on there. It's on every podcast app too. But also I do have a money archetype quiz, which is something you're probably familiar with, that there is a money archetype quiz. So there are essentially 8 different money personalities, and I have a money quiz on my website. So just go to moneymindsethub.com/quiz. Take that quiz and you will start to learn a lot more about your strengths and also your shadows, like we've been referring to from that quiz. And then of course I have my signature money program, which is Rich and Resilient. And that is just the Don Mega. It is another one of my baby. I have 3 babies. That would be my 4th baby. There's that.
Yeah, thank you so much. So if you want to work with Carla, I'm going to link all of those links that she also mentioned here in the show notes. So check that out, or you can reach out to Carla as well on Instagram and listen to her podcast as well. So thank you so much, Carla, for being here. This is such a good conversation.
I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the incredible future episodes and guests that we have coming up for you. And if you haven't already subscribed to our email list, be sure to do so, because we have some pretty epic things coming this year, as well as a mini magazine that will be sent to our subscribers every single month to help you with all things money and mindset, personal development, and entrepreneurship, to help support you on your journey. So until next time, The world needs more kind-hearted women like you with deep pockets. So keep moving forward and never give up. I'll catch you in the next episode.